In a quiet little town surrounded by lush green fields, there lived a young girl named Maya. At just 16 years old, she was known for her warm smile and kind heart. Everyone in the neighborhood admired her cheerful nature, but behind closed doors, life wasn't as bright as it seemed. Maya's world had turned upside down after her mother passed away suddenly. Her mom had been the glue that held their family together, and without her, everything began to fall apart. After her mother's death, Maya found herself under the care of her stepfather, Victor. Unlike her mother, who always put Maya first, Victor was a different story altogether. He was a man consumed by his own desires, gambling, drinking, and chasing quick ways to make money. The house they shared, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt cold and empty. Victor spent most of his time either yelling at Maya or ignoring her completely. Still, Maya tried her best to keep things running smoothly. She worked long hours at a small cafe near the market to earn some extra cash, hoping to ease the burden on their struggling household. But no matter how hard Maya worked, Victor never appreciated her efforts. Instead, he grew more resentful, blaming her for their financial troubles. "If your mother hadn't left this mess behind," he'd mutter bitterly whenever bills piled up. Deep down, Maya knew he didn't mean it. It was just easier for him to point fingers than take responsibility. Yet those words stung every time they left his lips. One evening, as Maya sat alone in the dimly lit kitchen eating leftovers, Victor burst through the door looking unusually excited. His eyes gleamed with a mix of desperation and greed, and Maya instinctively felt uneasy. It wasn't until later that night, when she overheard fragments of his phone conversation, that her worst fears came true. Victor was planning something sinister. He wanted to sell her off to someone wealthy. The idea sounded absurd, like something out of a nightmare, but Victor's tone made it clear he was serious. The next morning, Victor called Maya into the living room. Sitting across from her, he avoided eye contact as he explained his plan. "There's a man, a rich man, who's willing to pay good money to take care of you," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. Maya froze, unable to believe what she was hearing. "You can't be serious," she cried, tears welling up in her eyes. But Victor didn't flinch. "It's done," he snapped. "You'll go live with him, and we'll finally have enough money to fix our problems." Maya begged and pleaded, trying to reason with him, but Victor wouldn't budge. For the first time, she realized just how selfish he truly was. Money meant more to him than her happiness, or even her safety. Overwhelmed with despair, Maya packed a small bag that night, knowing she had no choice but to leave. As she stepped out of the only home she'd ever known, her heart sank. What lay ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: her life would never be the same again. Life in Mr. Hawthorne's mansion was both fascinating and unsettling for Maya. Every morning, she woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside her window, their melodies blending with the soft rustle of leaves in the garden. At first glance, it seemed like a dream: spacious rooms, delicious meals prepared by the chef, and a library filled with books that could keep her entertained for years. But beneath the surface, an invisible tension lingered. Maya couldn't shake the feeling that she was living under someone else's rules, even if those rules weren't explicitly stated. Edwin, as he insisted she call him, tried his best to make her feel welcome. He encouraged her to explore the mansion and use its amenities freely. "This is your home now," he often said, though his words felt hollow to Maya. How could this grand estate ever feel like home when she had been brought here against her will? Still, Edwin's attempts at kindness were undeniable. He ensured she had everything she needed: new clothes, art supplies, even a piano in case she wanted to learn. Yet, despite all these luxuries, Maya sensed that something was missing. There was a loneliness about Edwin that mirrored her own, and it made her wonder what secrets lay hidden behind his polite demeanor. One rule, however, stood out above all others. Maya wasn't allowed to leave the property without Edwin's permission. When she asked why, he simply replied, "It's for your safety." His answer left her uneasy. Was he trying to protect her, or was he afraid she might run away? The restriction weighed heavily on her, making her feel more like a guest under surveillance than a resident of the house. To distract herself, Maya spent hours wandering through the endless hallways, discovering new corners of the mansion each day. Some parts were breathtakingly beautiful, like the sunlit conservatory filled with exotic plants. Others, however, were dark and mysterious, like the locked wing on the second floor that no one seemed willing to talk about. As days turned into weeks, Maya began noticing strange things. Late at night, she heard faint voices echoing through the halls, though she rarely saw anyone speaking. Once, while passing Edwin's study, she caught snippets of a heated phone conversation. "I can't keep doing this," he muttered, his tone heavy with frustration. Curiosity burned inside her, but she knew better than to pry directly. Instead, she started paying closer attention to the small details, the way Edwin's hands trembled when he thought no one was watching, the piles of old letters stacked neatly on his desk, the distant look in his eyes whenever he gazed at the portrait hanging above the fireplace. Then came the discovery that changed everything. One rainy afternoon, while exploring a forgotten part of the mansion, Maya stumbled upon a hidden door behind a tapestry. Her heart raced as she pushed it open, revealing a dusty room filled with boxes and papers. Among them, she found faded photographs, newspaper clippings, and documents detailing donations made to orphanages and shelters across the country, all signed anonymously by Edwin Hawthorne. Shocked, Maya realized that this man, who had seemed so cold and distant at first, had been quietly helping countless people for years. But the most startling find was yet to come. Buried beneath the papers was a photograph of a young girl who looked eerily similar to Maya. On the back, written in shaky handwriting, were the words, "My beloved daughter, Charlotte." Maya's breath caught in her throat. Who was Charlotte? And why did Edwin have her picture hidden away? As questions swirled in her mind, Maya knew she had uncovered something profound. Something that might explain not only Edwin's actions, but also her own presence in this strange, lonely mansion. The day Maya left her home was one of the hardest she had ever faced. Victor didn't even walk her to the door. He simply handed her a piece of paper with an address scribbled on it and told her coldly, "Be there by noon." Her stomach churned as she clutched the crumpled note, feeling like a prisoner being sent to an unknown fate. The journey to the mansion was long and silent, each step making her heart heavier. She couldn't shake the image of Victor counting the money he'd received for selling her off. It made her feel worthless, like she was nothing more than a transaction. When Maya finally arrived at the towering iron gates of Mr. Edwin Hawthorne's estate, she felt a chill run down her spine. The mansion loomed ahead, its gray stone walls covered in ivy, giving it an eerie yet grand appearance. A servant greeted her at the gate and led her inside without saying much. The interior was just as imposing: high ceilings, polished marble floors, and antique furniture that looked untouched for decades. Everything about the place screamed wealth, but it also felt strangely lonely. Mr. Hawthorne wasn't there when Maya first entered. Instead, she was shown to a large guest room where a maid helped her unpack her meager belongings. The room was luxurious, far nicer than anything Maya had ever seen, but it offered little comfort. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring out the window at the sprawling gardens below. Despite the beauty surrounding her, she couldn't help but feel trapped. This wasn't freedom. It was just another cage, albeit a gilded one. Later that evening, Mr. Hawthorne finally appeared. He was an older man, his hair streaked with silver and his face lined with age. To Maya's surprise, he wasn't as intimidating as she'd imagined. His voice was calm, almost gentle, as he introduced himself. "I'm Edwin," he said, extending a hand. "I hope you'll find this place comfortable." Maya hesitated before shaking his hand, unsure of what to say. Comfortable? How could she feel comfortable knowing she'd been bought and brought here against her will? Over dinner, Edwin tried to explain his side of the story. He admitted that Victor had approached him with the offer, spinning tales of how Maya needed stability and guidance. Edwin confessed that he hadn't questioned the arrangement too deeply. He saw it as an opportunity to bring someone young and vibrant into his otherwise lonely life. "I've lived alone for many years," he said softly. "Perhaps having company will do me some good." Maya listened quietly, her mind racing. Part of her wanted to scream at him, to demand why he thought it was okay to buy another human being. But another part of her noticed something in his eyes, a sadness, a longing for connection. Still, none of that excused what had happened. She excused herself early, retreating to her room, where she spent hours staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of her new reality. The next few days were awkward and tense. Maya avoided Edwin as much as possible, spending most of her time exploring the massive mansion or sitting in the garden. The servants treated her kindly, but their politeness only reminded her of how out of place she felt. Every corner of the house seemed to whisper secrets, and Maya couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Edwin. And this strange arrangement then met the eye. One afternoon, while wandering through the library, Maya stumbled upon a photograph tucked between the pages of an old book. It was a picture of a young girl who bore a striking resemblance to her. Her heart skipped a beat as questions swirled in her mind. Who was this girl? And why did Edwin have her photo hidden away? For the first time since arriving, Maya felt a flicker of curiosity. Maybe, just maybe, understanding Edwin's past would help her figure out her own future. But getting those answers wouldn't be easy. The day Maya left for the city was bittersweet. The mansion, once a symbol of her captivity, had transformed into a place of healing and growth, not just for her, but for so many others whose lives she had touched. As the car carrying her luggage pulled out of the driveway, she rolled down the window to wave goodbye to Edwin, who stood on the porch watching her leave. His face was calm, but there was a hint of sadness in his eyes, a mix of pride and longing that mirrored how Maya felt inside. Settling into university life wasn't easy at first. The bustling city streets, crowded lecture halls, and unfamiliar faces made her feel like a small fish in an enormous ocean. But Maya carried with her the lessons she had learned over the past year: resilience, courage, and the power of second chances. She threw herself into her studies, determined to excel in social work and make a difference in the world. Her professors quickly noticed her passion and dedication, often praising her insightful contributions during class discussions. Outside of academics, Maya stayed connected to the community center back at the mansion. Every weekend, she returned to lead workshops or mentor the children who now called it their safe haven. Seeing their smiling faces reminded her of why she had chosen this path: to give others the support and opportunities she had fought so hard to find for herself. It also gave her a chance to check in on Edwin, who seemed happier than ever as he embraced his role as a benefactor and caretaker. One crisp autumn evening, Maya organized a charity gala at the mansion to raise funds for expanding the center's programs. The event brought together local leaders, philanthropists, and families whose lives had been changed by the initiative. As fireworks lit up the night sky, Maya stood on the balcony overlooking the crowd below. For the first time in years, she felt truly at peace. Edwin joined her after delivering a heartfelt speech about redemption and hope. "You've done something remarkable here, Maya," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "This place isn't just a shelter, it's proof that even broken things can be rebuilt." Maya smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "We rebuilt it together," she replied. "And I couldn't have done any of this without you." As the months passed, Maya continued to balance her studies with her work at the center. She became a beacon of inspiration for those around her, proving that no matter how difficult life got, it was possible to rise above adversity and create something beautiful. Her story spread beyond the small town, inspiring articles in newspapers and invitations to speak at conferences about overcoming hardship and giving back to the community. But what mattered most to Maya was the personal connections she had forged along the way. From Liam, who remained her steadfast friend and confidant, to Edwin, who had evolved from a distant stranger into a father figure. These relationships grounded her and reminded her of how far she had come. Years later, when Maya graduated at the top of her class, Edwin proudly attended the ceremony, tears glistening in his eyes as she walked across the stage. That night, they celebrated with a quiet dinner, reminiscing about everything they had overcome. "What's next for you?" Edwin asked, curious about her plans. "I want to travel," Maya admitted, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "To see more of the world, help people in different places, and maybe one day start my own foundation." Edwin nodded approvingly. "Whatever you choose, I know you'll do great things. Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" Maya asked, tilting her head. "That you'll always remember where you came from and how strong you are." Maya smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. No matter where life took her, she knew she would carry the memories of the mansion, its gardens, and the people who had shaped her journey. What had started as a nightmare had turned into a story of triumph, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of love, forgiveness, and hope. As fireworks burst overhead once again, lighting up the horizon, Maya whispered softly to herself, "Thank you, Mom, for guiding me here." And with that, she stepped boldly into the future, ready to embrace whatever came next. Maya's hands trembled as she held the photograph of the girl who looked so much like her. The name Charlotte echoed in her mind, stirring a mix of curiosity and unease. She couldn't ignore the resemblance. It was uncanny, almost as if the universe had played some cruel trick, placing her in this house for a reason she didn't yet understand. Her heart pounded as she carefully tucked the photo into her pocket and decided it was time to confront Edwin. Whatever secrets he was hiding, she deserved answers. That evening, after dinner, Maya approached Edwin in his study. He was seated at his desk, glasses perched on his nose, reading through a stack of papers. When she knocked softly on the doorframe, he looked up, surprised to see her standing there. "Maya," he said, his voice softening. "Is everything all right?" "I found something today," she began, pulling out the photograph. She placed it gently on the desk in front of him. "Who is this? And why does she look like me?" Edwin froze, his eyes widening as they landed on the picture. For a moment, he didn't speak, his face pale and drawn. Then, with a heavy sigh, he removed his glasses and leaned back in his chair. "I wondered how long it would take before you stumbled upon that," he murmured, more to himself than to her. His tone was filled with sadness, and for the first time, Maya saw cracks in the composed exterior he always maintained. "Her name was Charlotte," Edwin finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "She was my daughter." He paused, swallowing hard as though the words pained him. "She disappeared 18 years ago. We never found her." Maya's stomach dropped. She sank into the chair opposite him, overwhelmed by the weight of his confession. "What happened to her?" she asked quietly, afraid of what the answer might be. "It's complicated," Edwin admitted, rubbing his temples. "She ran away. We had our differences, arguments about her future, about choices she wanted to make. I thought I was protecting her, but maybe I pushed too hard. One night, she left, and no matter how hard I searched, I couldn't bring her back." His voice cracked, and he looked away, staring out the window at the darkened garden. For several moments, neither of them spoke. The room felt heavy with unspoken grief. Finally, Maya broke the silence. "Why did you agree to take me in?" she asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "Was it because I reminded you of her?" Edwin hesitated, then nodded slowly. "At first, yes. When Victor approached me, I saw your picture and thought. I don't know what I thought. Maybe I believed having someone around who looked like Charlotte would ease the pain. It sounds foolish now, doesn't it?" He gave a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "But when you arrived, I realized I couldn't treat you like a replacement. You're not Charlotte, and I shouldn't have tried to fill the void she left with anyone else." Maya listened intently, her anger mingling with sympathy. This man, who had seemed so distant and cold, was carrying a burden far heavier than she'd imagined. His loneliness wasn't just about living in a big house alone. It stemmed from losing the person he loved most. Still, she couldn't let go of the fact that he had paid for her presence, however well-meaning his intentions might have been. "I appreciate your honesty," Maya said finally, choosing her words carefully. "But I need you to understand. I'm not here because I want to be. I didn't ask for this life, and I don't belong to anyone. If I stay, it has to be because I choose to, not because of some deal you made with my stepfather." Edwin met her gaze, his expression solemn. "You're absolutely right," he said. "And I promise, Maya, I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. You deserve better than what I've given you so far." Though Maya still felt conflicted, a small part of her began to soften. She could see the regret in Edwin's eyes, the genuine desire to change. But trust wouldn't come easily. It would take time, patience, and proof that he truly meant what he said. As she stood to leave the study, she glanced once more at the photograph of Charlotte. Something told her that understanding Edwin's past was only the beginning of unraveling the mysteries of this mansion, and perhaps finding a way to reclaim her own freedom. With Victor behind bars and her legal emancipation secured, Maya finally felt a sense of freedom she hadn't known in years. The weight that had been crushing her chest since her mother's death began to lift, replaced by a cautious optimism about the future. Yet, as much as she wanted to celebrate this newfound independence, Maya couldn't ignore the complex emotions swirling inside her, especially when it came to Edwin. Though Edwin had given her complete autonomy, their relationship remained complicated. Maya still struggled with the fact that he had paid for her presence, no matter how well-intentioned his actions might have been now. At the same time, she couldn't deny the bond they had formed over the past few months. He wasn't just the man who had bought her freedom. He was also someone who had shown her kindness, supported her dreams, and helped her take back control of her life. For better or worse, Edwin had become an unexpected part of her journey. One evening, as they sat together on the mansion's sprawling veranda watching the sunset, Maya decided to voice the thoughts that had been weighing on her mind. "Edwin," she began hesitantly, "I want to thank you for everything. I know I haven't always made things easy for you, but I don't think I'd be where I am today without your help." Edwin smiled faintly, though his eyes held a hint of sadness. "You don't owe me gratitude, Maya," he replied softly. "What I did was wrong, and I'll carry that regret for the rest of my life. But if there's even a small chance I've made up for some of my mistakes by helping you, then maybe I can find peace someday." His honesty touched Maya deeply. She realized that Edwin wasn't just trying to make amends with her. He was also seeking redemption for losing Charlotte all those years ago. In a way, they were both healing from their pasts, finding solace in each other's company despite the pain that had brought them together. As days turned into weeks, Maya threw herself into planning her next steps. With Edwin's encouragement, she applied for scholarships to study social work, determined to use her experiences to help others facing similar struggles. She spent hours drafting essays, gathering recommendation letters, and preparing for interviews. Edwin offered his full support, even helping her practice mock interviews in his study. Watching him cheer her on reminded Maya of how far they'd come, from strangers bound by a transaction to something resembling a real family. But as excited as Maya was about her future, she knew staying in the mansion indefinitely wasn't an option. While it had provided her shelter and stability during a dark time, it wasn't truly hers. One afternoon, she approached Edwin with a proposal. "I want to turn part of this house into a safe space for kids like me," she said, her eyes shining with determination. "A place where they can feel safe, learn new skills, and rebuild their lives. What do you think?" To her delight, Edwin immediately agreed. Together, they transformed one wing of the mansion into a vibrant community center, complete with classrooms, art studios, and counseling rooms. Maya organized workshops, invited local mentors to volunteer, and reached out to shelters and schools to spread the word. Slowly but surely, the once lonely estate became a hub of laughter, creativity, and hope. Seeing the impact of her efforts filled Maya with pride. It wasn't just about giving back. It was about proving to herself that she could rise above her circumstances and create something meaningful. And through it all, Edwin stood by her side, quietly cheering her on while learning to let go of his guilt and embrace the present. By the time summer arrived, Maya received the news she had been waiting for. She had earned a full scholarship to a prestigious university in the city. As thrilled as she was, saying goodbye to Edwin wasn't easy. On her last night at the mansion, they shared a quiet dinner under the stars, reflecting on everything they had been through. "I'm proud of you, Maya," Edwin said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've grown into such an incredible young woman. Your mother would be so proud too." Tears welled up in Maya's eyes, but she smiled through them. "Thank you, Edwin, for believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." The next morning, as Maya packed her bags and prepared to leave, she paused at the doorway to look back at the mansion one last time. It wasn't home anymore, not in the traditional sense, but it would always hold a special place in her heart. Little did she know, this wasn't the end of her story. It was only the beginning of a new chapter filled with endless possibilities. As days turned into weeks, Maya found herself growing more comfortable in Edwin's mansion, not because she had forgotten her circumstances, but because she began to see glimpses of humanity in him. He wasn't just the wealthy, enigmatic man who had paid for her presence. He was also a grieving father trying to piece together the fragments of his broken life. Their conversations became less formal and more genuine, often revolving around the work Edwin did behind the scenes to help others. Maya learned that his anonymous donations to orphanages and shelters weren't just random acts of charity. They were deeply personal, driven by guilt over losing Charlotte and a desire to make amends. One afternoon, while organizing some of Edwin's papers in his study, Maya stumbled upon a letter addressed to her. It was written in neat handwriting and sealed with wax. Confused, she opened it carefully. Inside, Edwin explained how proud he was of her resilience and courage. "You remind me not only of Charlotte, but also of the person I wish I could have been," he wrote. "Strong, kind, and unafraid to fight for what's right." The letter ended with an offer. If she ever wanted to leave, he wouldn't stop her. Instead, he promised to support her in any way she needed. Touched by his words, Maya realized that Edwin was slowly letting go of his control over her. But freedom wasn't something she could achieve alone. She still felt trapped by Victor's betrayal and feared that he might try to interfere again. Determined to take matters into her own hands, Maya decided it was time to reach out for help. Late one night, when everyone else was asleep, she snuck into the garden and approached Thomas, the elderly gardener who had worked at the mansion for decades. Though quiet and reserved, Thomas had always treated Maya kindly, often leaving fresh flowers on her windowsill or offering small words of encouragement. "Thomas," she whispered, pulling him aside near the rose bushes. "I need your help. Is there any way I can send a message outside without anyone knowing?" Thomas hesitated, glancing toward the house before nodding slowly. "There's a post office in town where I deliver supplies every Tuesday," he said. "If you write your letter, I can mail it for you." Relieved, Maya thanked him profusely and hurried back inside to compose a note to Liam, her childhood friend. In the letter, she poured out everything: how Victor had sold her, her strange new life with Edwin, and her determination to escape Victor's shadow once and for all. She begged Liam to help her expose Victor's crimes and find a way to sever ties with him permanently. After sealing the envelope, she handed it to Thomas the next morning, trusting him to keep her secret. Weeks passed before Maya received a reply. One day, as she sat sketching in the conservatory, a servant brought her a plain white envelope. Her heart leaped as she recognized Liam's messy scrawl on the front. Inside, he assured her that he was already working on gathering evidence against Victor. "We'll get justice for you," he wrote. "Just hold on a little longer." Encouraged by Liam's response, Maya threw herself into helping Edwin with his charity work. Together, They planned events, sorted donations, and even visited nearby shelters. Through these activities, Maya discovered a passion for helping others, finding solace in making a difference in people's lives. Edwin noticed the change in her demeanor and smiled more often, proud of the young woman she was becoming. But their fragile peace was shattered one stormy evening when Victor unexpectedly appeared at the mansion. Drenched from the rain and reeking of alcohol, he stormed into the living room where Maya and Edwin were seated. "Where's my money?" he demanded, glaring at Edwin. "You think you can buy her, and then cut me off? Not happening." Maya stood frozen, her blood running cold. Edwin, however, remained calm, rising to his feet with quiet authority. "You've taken enough from her," he said firmly. "Leave now, or I'll call the police." Victor sneered, taking a menacing step forward. "You don't scare me, old man. She's my responsibility, and I'll do whatever I want with her." Before things could escalate further, Maya stepped between them, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "No, Victor," she said, meeting his gaze head-on. "You're done controlling me. This ends here." The tension in the room was palpable, but Maya refused to back down. Little did Victor know, his reckless behavior would soon lead to consequences far greater than he anticipated. And Maya was ready to face them head-on. The storm outside mirrored the chaos brewing inside the mansion as Victor's drunken rage filled the room. His menacing glare shifted between Maya and Edwin, his fists clenched like he was ready to lash out at any moment. But despite the fear bubbling in her chest, Maya stood her ground. She wasn't the same girl who had been dragged into this house weeks ago. She had grown stronger, braver, and more determined than ever to take back control of her life. Edwin, too, refused to back down. "You're not welcome here," he said firmly, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "If you don't leave now, I'll have no choice but to involve the authorities." Victor scoffed, taking another step forward. "You think I'm scared of your threats? You bought her, didn't you? That makes you just as guilty as me." Maya's heart raced, but she forced herself to speak up. "No one owns me," she declared, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I'm not some object you can sell or buy. And if you don't leave right now, we'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are." For a split second, Victor hesitated, his confidence wavering under the weight of her defiance. But then his face twisted with anger, and he lunged toward her, shouting, "You ungrateful little—" Before he could finish, the sound of car tires screeching outside interrupted him. Moments later, the front door burst open, and 2 police officers stepped inside, their uniforms drenched from the rain. Liam followed closely behind them, his expression grim but resolute. "Step away from her," one of the officers commanded, eyeing Victor warily. When Victor froze, caught off guard, the officer continued, "We've received credible reports about your illegal activities, including forgery and exploitation. You're under arrest." Victor's face turned pale as realization dawned on him. "What? How?" he stammered, looking wildly at Maya. "This is all you're doing, isn't it?" Maya met his gaze without flinching. "You brought this on yourself," she replied coldly. "Liam and I have been gathering evidence for weeks. Your lies and greed finally caught up with you." As the officers handcuffed Victor and led him out of the mansion, Maya felt a wave of relief wash over her. For the first time in months, she could breathe freely, knowing she was safe from his manipulation. But even as the immediate danger passed, she knew there was still work to be done. Later that night, after the commotion had died down, Maya sat with Edwin in the study. The fire crackled softly in the hearth, casting a warm glow around the room. Though exhausted, she couldn't ignore the lingering questions in her mind. "How did you know they were coming?" she asked, glancing at him curiously. "I didn't," Edwin admitted, leaning back in his chair. "But I contacted my lawyer earlier today, just in case Victor tried something reckless. It seems your friend Liam reached out to the authorities independently. Together, our efforts paid off." Maya nodded, grateful for the role both men had played in bringing Victor to justice. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that her freedom wasn't fully hers yet, not while she remained tied to Edwin by circumstances beyond her control. Sensing her unease, Edwin sighed deeply. "Maya," he began, his tone soft but serious. "You've made it clear that you want to live your own life, and I respect that. From this moment on, you're free to make your own choices. If you wish to stay here, it will be because you choose to, not because of anything I've done. And if you decide to leave, I'll support you every step of the way." His words took Maya by surprise. She had expected resistance, maybe even guilt-tripping, but instead, Edwin was offering her the one thing she'd been fighting for: autonomy. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized just how far he had come since their rocky beginning. He wasn't perfect. He never would be. But he was trying, and that meant more to her than she could put into words. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "That means everything to me." Over the next few days, Maya worked with Edwin's lawyer to formally sever ties with Victor once and for all. With Liam's help, they ensured that Victor wouldn't be able to interfere in her life again. Meanwhile, Edwin helped Maya secure legal emancipation, giving her full independence at last. As the paperwork was finalized, Maya felt a sense of closure she hadn't known was possible. The chapter of her life dominated by fear and betrayal was finally over, and a new one was waiting to begin.